We have a working chassis. Now it's just time to mount that body. Welcome back to the channel, guys. As you saw, the chassis is completed and fully functioning. I'm going to give you a rundown of what I did to finish off the chassis before we get into those body mounts. The rear, just like I mentioned, I went with a single servo in the rear, a dual axis servo. The bracket or arm that I had printed in the last video didn't quite work. I had to use the metal plate bracket that they provide with the servo, and I just printed an arm that bolts across it. That way it connects my two cantilevers together, and that works perfectly fine. For the front, I got these larger servos in, and right after getting them installed, tried them out, and it snapped the cantilever arms here. It was just too much power, so I went ahead and beefed those up. Basically just gave us a little more material around where the bolt slides up and down as the servo moves throughout. I also had these mounts originally for those servos, and I found that there was too much flex when raising the truck up and down. Basically, instead of just the servo arm moving, that movement was transferred to the mount and flexing the servos back and forth. So I went ahead and created a mount that tied both servos together. It's a lot stronger now. It actually strengthens up the front end of the chassis a lot. So I'm pretty happy with this setup now. So just like you saw a little while ago, if we power everything on, we can go ahead, just like I talked about with the transmitter. We'll press the channel 4 button and raise the back up, and channel 3 will raise the front up. Really nice. I love the ride height here. Everything functions exactly like I wanted. I will give you a quick heads up though. All of these servos will be replaced again. While going ahead and figuring out how to mount the body, I realized that these servos all work perfectly as the chassis sits right here, but when I throw that body on there, it struggles a little bit, and you'll see that later in this video. So we're going to replace these servos with a little bit stronger servos, and hopefully when that body's fully mounted on, we won't have any issues. It'll raise up just like you just saw. When it comes to those body mounts, you might have noticed on the front that I already have them installed on the chassis. I'm planning on using a similar design to what I just put on my dirt drag build, where it's basically a body post mounted upside down under the body so that we don't see any body clips or holes sticking up through the body. So you see them mounted here. The posts, which you'll see in a little bit on the body, will slide through here, and we'll slide a pin underneath. Also have some printed up for the rear, so we're going to go ahead and install those now. As simple as pulling the screws out and sliding them straight through the new mounts. For the body itself, like I mentioned, we're going to run some posts that'll stick down through those mounts. On the rear, it's as simple as just a little post that is screwed from the inside. You won't see those screws as the bed will be covered with something when we end up working on the interior. For the front, it was a little more difficult to find a way to mount these. What I ended up doing, if I could get you a good shot here, was using the screw holes for the grill. It actually just uses this one screw, and there's some gussets for the bracket where the grill mounts to the body. I actually made my bracket for my body post fit in between those gussets, so it can't rotate, it can't go anywhere. It just sits in there. That screw holds it in place. And now, if we could move some of this wiring out the way so I could show you guys how this fits on. Rear post and front post in place, and that looks really sick already. Of course, still a lot more to do, but man, this thing is looking good. It's sitting where I want it. Let's see how it raises with that body on there. So I don't really have any of the wires tucked into the body. They're all just sitting on the back side of the body on the opposite side of the truck, but we're gonna lift the rear first. Lifts up to a pretty nice height. The front comes up pretty good as well. So it seems a little sluggish, a little hesitant, and I'm hoping those stronger servos will finish that off and make it lift a little better. You can see here we have a pretty good ride height here. I don't think we'll have any trouble driving the truck and steering at this ride height. The only concern that I really have, you may be able to see it here if you watch these cantilevers. I built some spacers that go in between the servo horn and the cantilever arm to try to keep them as parallel to each other as possible. In the upright position here, you can maybe see that there's a little angle to them. When I drop it down, they go back towards straight. I'm not sure if that's an issue with the servo horns themselves not being strong enough or with the cantilever arms themselves, but you may be able to see it here. Coming up, they just kind of angle a little bit, which I'm hoping we can maybe get a little better. Maybe with those new servos, they'll come with new horns and maybe that'll work a little better. I'm not quite sure, but for now, it works pretty well. Dropping it down, and man, I just love the way this thing sits. Of course, now this looks great, the body's sitting on the ground, but we don't want just black circles in those wheel wells, do we? I think this would look a whole lot better with some wheels. Let's see if we can get a little magic here. Oh yeah, definitely. These 10-spoke wheels look pretty sick sitting underneath that body. You guys gave me a whole bunch of suggestions. I appreciate all your comments and your opinions on which wheels I should run with. I will say I haven't made the final decision just yet, but I thought this was a good start. I wanted to see what these would look like under the body. So I printed out a set of these. It looks really, really cool. They'll actually have one more small detail. I don't want to see the wheel nut and the axle shaft sticking out of the wheel there. Just throws off the scale look. So I printed up these little tiny hubcaps, and I have to cut the axle shaft down, but they will end up pressing on top in the hole there and covering up that wheel nut. Should give us a really cool scale look. And it's just one of those extra added details that I'm hoping will really set the truck off. One thing we kind of glossed over though, to get this body to fit and to get those wheels and tires to fit, I had to do a lot of chopping to this body. I actually cut out the entire bed floor and raised it up probably, I don't know, about a ½ inch or so, I'd say. Raised that up, cut out the fender wells, and cut out that giant section in the middle for the cantilevers and the C-notch. All of this is gonna get covered back up though for the most part. Just a little teaser for you. That'll all be more in another video, but I already printed out some wheel tubs that are gonna sit on either side to cover up my tires. And then for the center section, I believe we're gonna make a hump out of styrene. I do want the shocks and the cantilever arms to still stick out, but I don't wanna see the servo. I don't wanna see the servo arm itself. The only thing I really wanna see is the cantilever and the shock. The hump in the bed will probably come up to about where these wheel tubs are as well. All in all, you won't be seeing much of this at all because the top will be going back on the body, but you can still see through those windows a bit and you'll be able to see through the back glass as well. So I do want to dress it up and make it look nice. So I know this video turned out a little shorter than normal this week, but it took me a good bit of time getting all of the suspension working and figuring out how to mount that body. But you know what? It all works pretty well now. I'm pretty excited about it. We may have to narrow the front end just a little bit to make sure we're clearing the tires on the inside of the body. Looks like it rubs just a little bit. But besides that, even at ride height like this thing looks pretty sweet. Can't wait to get that body finished up, get all those details done, and get some paint on it. There's a whole lot more work to do though. In the bed, in the interior, in the engine compartment, there's a whole lot of detail that I want to put into this thing. My goal is basically to fool the camera. I want to be able to take a picture of this truck out in the open in a parking lot somewhere and it look real. So make sure to subscribe, keep following along with the build. Leave a like if you enjoyed. I haven't really thought about it much so far, but drop a comment down below. Tell me what color you think this thing should go. Although that is a little further down the line, I do need to start thinking about that sooner or later. And last but not least, as always, thanks again for watching. Peace.